Hi guys, let's do a little bit of review. We've learned 3 ways to solve quadratic expressions to find the roots. So you kind of have to figure out which one method you're going to use when. This is obviously not the solve by square root method because it has an x in it. It's already set equal to 0. I could either factor or I could use quadratic formula. I would rather factor if I could because it's quicker and easier. This one to me looks like it would be quick and easy to solve, to factor, I mean, because I know that x times x is x squared. I can see that two factors that multiply to negative 28 but are going to add to negative 3 are going to be 7 and 4. So let's do minus 7 plus 4. Because negative 7 times 4 is negative 28, negative 7x plus 4x is negative 3. So since I can quickly and easily solve it, factor it, we'll use the factoring method. So now let's make two equations. Let's set each factor equal to 0 because if two things multiply to get 0, one or both of them must be 0. I'll set each factor to 0, solve it like a basic two-step equation. Add your 7, so x equals 7, minus your 4, so x equals negative 4. You can leave it like this or write your two roots in set notation. That means that this parabola crosses the x-axis at negative 4 and 7. And since it's a positive in front, I know it's an upward-facing parabola. Let's look at number 2. This one to me looks easiest to factor also. It has a GCF. I would factor out the x because remember I always look for a GCF first. X squared divided by x is x. 5x divided by x is 5. This one factored quite easily with a GCF. Now either x is 0 because x alone is one of my factors. Well, that one's done. I have no solving to do. Or x plus 5 is 0. Basic one-step equation, subtract the 5, x equals negative 5. Those are your two answers. So there's a review of factor by solving. Now when I see a problem with no x term, just an x squared and a constant, no x term in the middle, that means I want to do it by square root. Solving by square root is the only method where I don't want it equal to 0. I want to isolate the x squared term. So that means I'm going to subtract the 49. X squared equals negative 49. Now that I have my x squared term by itself, take the square root of both sides, and x equals, oh my goodness, I can't take the square root of a negative number. At least not until I get to Algebra 2 when I learn imaginary numbers. So, since I can't take the square root of a negative number, this one has no solution. That means that this parabola actually never touches the x-intercept. It's one of those that sits above or below it. So, no solution. I wanted to show you one like that. Now, I have another one with no x term, but it is equal to 0. I don't want it equal to 0. So I add my 13 to get it to the other side. Now, my x squared is still not isolated. It has a 4 attached. The way I get rid of that 4, divide by it. X squared equals 13 over 4. To get rid of the squared and only get x, I take the square root of both sides because my goal is to solve for x. Remember that square root of something, I get both a positive and a negative answer, and I want both of those because those are my two roots. So I get positive or negative. I don't know the square root of 13, so I'm just going to leave it, but I do know the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So if you want to just leave your answer exactly like that, it doesn't simplify any further. If you want an exact answer, you have to say that x is positive or negative square root of 13 over 2. Let's look at our last two examples. This would be quadratic formula. This one cannot be factored. It looks simple enough at first, but if you tried, you would see that you can't factor it. So, first thing I do, is it equal to 0? Yes, I'm in good shape there. Identify A, B, and C. well, there's no number in front of the x squared. That means there's an imaginary 1. A is 1, B is 3, C is negative 5. Please don't forget your negative. The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So when I simplify this, negative 3 plus or minus the square root of, this is going to be 9 plus 20, that's 29, and 2 times 1 is 1. Since the square root of 29 cannot be reduced at all, it cannot be simplified, just leave your answer like that. You have a root at negative 3 plus square root of 29 over 2, and a second root at negative 3 minus square root of 29 over 2. But instead of making you write it out twice, I am fine with you leaving your answer like this. So let's look at the other one. This one does have an x term, so I can't use the square root of both sides, but it's not equal to 0. So the first thing I want to do is make it equal to 0. To do that, I have to minus the 2x minus the 3. Now I have it equal to 0. This one would not be easily factored, so go ahead and try if you want to, but let's just not waste any time and go straight to quadratic formula. A is 3, B is negative 2, C is negative 3. So let's plug into our formula. The formula says negative b. B is already negative. You can put negative, negative, or some of you will just want to go straight to positive because you know negative, negative is positive. Plus or minus the square root of, please put that negative 2 in parentheses before you square it, minus 4ac divided by 2a. Negative, negative is positive. We've already discussed that. Plus or minus 2 times 3 is 6. Square root of, that is 4 plus 36. That's 40. All right, this is going to be one of the trickier ones to simplify. If you got at least this far, I would probably do a little happy dance and I would be satisfied. But to totally simplify this and get an answer that is going to be in standard format that everybody could recognize, we really need to simplify it a little further. So let's simplify the radical. Square root of 40 can be divided into 4 times 10. The reason I would do that is 4 is a perfect square. So 2 plus or minus, what's the square root of 4? It is 2. I don't know the square root of 10. I leave it under the radical. That's how we simplify. Square root of 40 divided into 4 times 10. Then take out the square root of 4, leave 10 underneath. Nothing else changed. I would do a bigger happy dance if you got this far. However, you still haven't simplified it all the way. Mrs. Jones's silly little way of doing this is I draw a little heart around these 3 terms and I leave the radical out because I'm treating him like an x. He's not a number, he's kind of like an x. So look at these 3. Do they have a common factor? Why, yes, they do. They can all be divided by 2, so let's go ahead and do that. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now, this 1's unnecessary. I don't have to put it there, but I can. Square root of 10 stays the same. It's like an x. It doesn't change. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. This one would just make me jump for joy because this is your completely simplified answer.